post-end of the world, and the majority of Australia has been diminished to a desert no man's land. Nonetheless, a clan called Vuvalini of the Many Moms lives in a disconnected desert garden. One day while out collecting peaches, youthful Furiosa, Alila Brown, and her companion Valkyrie, Dylan Adonis, see a posse of pirates in the desert spring, butchering a pony. Expecting to shield the area of their home from pariahs, Furiosa advises Valkyrie to stow away and afterward attempts to disrupt the group's bikes. The posse gets and captures her as Furiosa whistles for help. Furiosa's mom Mary, Charlie Fraser, and Mary's companion, Elsa Patakai, seek after and kill a portion of the gangsters, however not the one with Furiosa. In the end, the enduring gangster shows up at his camp, which is controlled by the savage Dementus, Chris Hemsworth. Before the gangster can give the area of the desert garden, Furiosa figures out how to cut his throat. Dementus, who notes he lost his own youngsters during the end of the world, has Furiosa taken to a tent and vows to bring her back home the following day. During a dust storm, Mary sneaks in and figures out how to kill Furiosa's gatekeepers and escape with her little girl. However, Dementus tracks the pair with his dogs. In the end, Dementus and his pack catch the couple. He mercilessly torments Mary before Furiosa for the desert spring area. Yet, Mary never uncovers it before she passes on. Furiosa then goes quiet, declining to talk for a really long time. The main thing Furiosa needs to help her to remember home is a seed from the peach tree that she was reaping. Furiosa is kept as Dementus's detainee, in spite of the fact that he frequently alludes to her as his little girl. She is compelled to observe her as his group fills in size and mercilessness. One such second is when Dementus and his companions corner a more modest gathering and power them to join his posse. As a feature of the custom, the head of the more modest gathering is fastened to 5 bikes. Different individuals from the gathering are then compelled to battle to get on the bike. If not, Dementus will have them generally killed. After the 5 victors sit down on the bike, they drive off and destroy their old chief. Dementus and his posse later find a cerebrum-harmed war kid meandering in the desert, having obviously been injured in a fight with an obscure foe. The conflict kid tells Dementus of his home in the fortress, where there is a lot of water and food. While glancing through the conflict kid's stuff, they fire off his flare weapon and it colors Dementus's facial hair red, causing Dementus a deep sense of pleasure. Dementus and his huge group crash into the fortification, a fort worked inside rock developments that siphon spotless, new water from underneath the surface into a storage at the highest point of the stone arrangements, and attempts to turn individuals against their chief, a man named Immortan Joe, Lucky Hume. Joe, alongside his guide Individuals Eater, John Howard, and children Rictus, Nathan Jones, and Scrotus, Josh Hellman, derides Dementus. He has his conflict young men, Joe's warriors, throw explosives onto Dementus's group from a position of great authority and use cranes to lift away a large number of their vehicles. Dementus withdraws with what survives from his powers, yet starts watching the fortress. He discovers that the bastion exchanges food and water for gas from neighboring Gastown and projectiles from another close-by place called the Shot Ranch. Dementus and his powers figure out how to overwhelm one of the stronghold's vehicle trucks, called a conflict rig, while heading to Gastown, and utilizes it to sneak in his champions. When inside, Dementus's officers snare Gastown's powers, open the doors, and Dementus dominates. As the new man in control, Dementus opens exchanges with Joe, taking steps to utilize a distant detonator to explode Gastown in the event that Joe attempts to kill him. Joe consents to build how much water and food shipped off Gastown in return for Furiosa. Solid ladies are uncommon, so he desires to one day have her as a reproducer. And for the natural repairman, Angus Sampson, a man with clinical information, Dementus rejects the arrangement, saying that Joe won't separate him from his little girl. However, Furiosa supports the first time in quite a while and says she's not his little girl and that she needs to join the bastion. Dementus then, at that point, acknowledges the arrangement. Furiosa ultimately figures out how to get away from the room where Joe keeps his oppressed spouses and reproducers. She then dresses as a kid and works with Scrotus's group, fabricating new vehicles and deadlier conflict rigs. Years pass, and Furiosa, Anya Taylor-Delight, is presently a youthful grown-up. Having demonstrated her mechanical abilities, she is a profoundly regarded group part. Furiosa keeps on imagining that she is quiet. She covertly devises a game plan to take off with the goal that she can get back. Pretorian Jack, Tom Burke, is Joe's best driver, having never lost a conflict rig during transport. As he leaves for his latest hurry to Gastown and Shot Homestead, Furiosa sneaks on board by Strong herself to the underside of the conflict rig. Sadly, the conflict rig is gone after by a posse that fragmented off from Dementus group and were banished from Gastown. A significant fight follows, with the pack utilizing every kind of lightweight planes and flying vehicles against Jack and his group. After the fight, Jack and Furiosa as the main survivors. Furiosa attempts to take the conflict rig, yet Jack figures out how to stop her. The pair then, at that point, talk, and Jack offers to make Furiosa his understudy so she can learn all that he is familiar with vehicles and battle. With that information, she can make a legitimate departure when everything looks good. Furiosa acknowledges his deal. Additional time elapses, and Furiosa is currently a Pretorian and Jack's second in order. Additionally, the two have experienced passionate feelings for. One night as Jack and Furiosa talk in a secret bluff on the Bastion, Jack says that he accepts Furiosa is prepared to scramble toward opportunity. He likewise trusts that he upheld her since his folks accepted that nothing was a higher priority than battling for a purpose. And he accepts he is at last doing that by aiding her. Jack then inquires as to whether Furiosa will allow him to accompany her, and she concurs. At the point when the pair show up in Gastown, they observe that the local area is to be sure in disorder and near the very edge of breakdown. Regardless of the food shipments, large numbers of individuals are starving because of Dementus's botch. As the food and water are dumped, Dementus shows up and solicitations to meet with Joe and the slug rancher to examine how they can re-establish request to Gastown. He then, at that point, incites the residents to revolt, and Furiosa and Jack scarcely figure out how to escape alive. At the point when they report the news to Joe, he calls the projectile rancher to the fortress, where he and his children and counselors banter what to do. They, in the long run, choose to go after Dementus and request the Praetorians to go to the projectile ranch to bring back all the ammunition they can convey. In the wake of accepting their orders, Furiosa and Jack choose to evade during this mission. At the projectile ranch, the stronghold powers are gone after by Dementus and his troopers. Dementus had guessed that Joe and the shot rancher would attempt to take all the ammunition and kill him. So while the rancher was gone, he sent off an unexpected assault against the homestead and took it for himself. The conflict young men are immediately killed off, and Jack is caught inside projectile homestead. He shouts at Furiosa, who stayed away from the snare, to escape while he dispatches a one-man assault on Dementus. She won't leave him and enters the slug homestead readily. Both of them figure out how to make a supernatural getaway. Irritated by their resistance, Dementus and his powers seek after the pair. Regardless of their earnest attempts, Furiosa and Jack are caught by Dementus, who doesn't perceive a now completely developed Furiosa. To rebuff them for their expectation and love, he ties Furiosa up and afterward has Jack killed by being hauled to death by a bike and eaten by his dogs. During the display, Furiosa cut off her arm that was bound, undermines Dementus's vehicles, and breaks. She gets back to the fortress, suggested to be helped along by distraught Max Rokotansky, who is seen watching her as she crosses the desert, and informs Immortan Joe and the shot rancher concerning all that unfolded. She then promises to kill Dementus actually. War follows, drove by Scrotus. As the conflict is pursued, Furiosa constructs herself a mechanical arm and afterward drives out to the front. There, she sees that Scrotus has won the conflict. In spite of the fact that Dementus's powers have been crushed, Dementus got away into the desert. Furiosa follows Dementus into the desert, killing his final partners as she follows them. In the end, Dementus is the last one standing of his once strong posse. He gets up one morning to find that his flask has been cut open, his bike obliterated, and his weapons discharged of ammunition. Furiosa defies him, and after a short battle, he gives up to her. As she torments him, he at last acknowledges what her identity is. As opposed to fear her, he is thrilled to be brought together with his girl. He says that Furiosa will be his actual replacement, as she will presently be directed by bloodlust and retaliation, similarly as he is. Furiosa renounces his cases, saying she will demonstrate she is nothing similar to him. A few distinct endings are introduced by the storyteller of the film. One is that Furiosa just shoots and kills Dementus. Another is that she torments Dementus similarly he tormented Mary and Jack. However, the storyteller then uncovers what Furiosa says occurred. Furiosa claims that she took Dementus back to the Bastion. There, she established the peach tree seed within him. The tree developed, ejecting out of his stomach and bearing new natural product out of his pitiful body. The film then finishes with Furiosa sneaking Immortan Joe's spouses into her conflict rig so she can free them from the fortification and Joe's oppression.